Okay, first start by stating your name.
Richard Gould.
What is your relationship to the Zahra Baker Playground?
My relationship with the Zahra Baker Playground started when I was a reporter with the Hickorys Daily Record. I covered the Zara case from the moment that she was declared missing till the moment that, till about a year ago, till they found the last piece of her remains. And during that time, the city and the Kiwanis Club decided to join together to build this playground in her memory. And I was here during the build. I was here for the grand opening. I've been here all along the way.
How long approximately would you say you've been associated with the Zahra Baker Playground or with the case itself?
Oh boy. I'd say at least 3 years, maybe more.
Is there anything about the history that you consider significant for us to know?
Not sure I follow your question.
About the history of the playground, is there anything significant that you would like for us to know about the playground itself or the history of the case?
Well, the playground itself started when the idea for the I hope you can edit well. The idea for the playground started when Hickory Mayor Wright, and hopefully he can tell you more about this, but the Hickory Mayor and the City Council went to a park in Tennessee that was a park for, it was a handicap accessible park. And what they really got excited about there was a handicap accessible treehouse. So that was kind of the idea for where they started with the idea for this park. And the treehouse was supposed to be right there under that red oak tree. You can see there's no treehouse there. And that's kind of the next phase. They still plan to build it. But while they were researching the treehouse, they found out about all these other handicapped accessible structures. And they felt like they could get more bang for their buck if they went this way. And a lot of these things are, yeah, they're handicap accessible, but everybody else loves them too. My kids have played out here 100 times. They love the playground. And I don't know, the hard part is when my children walk past the Zara sign that you guys saw when we came in, and they say, "Daddy, who was she? Why does she have this playground?" And I just have to say she was a little girl who was killed by a real life wicked stepmother. And I don't go into a lot of the gory details because they don't need that, but it's kind of the park has a sad edge to it as well, because every moment you're out here, you're thinking about the little girl and what she went through.
How often do you come to the playground with your children?
My wife comes a lot more often than I do. I'd say they're out here maybe a couple times a month.
Do you have any personal experiences out here that are significant?
I don't know that they're significant. Just watching my kids come down the 50-foot hill slide backwards and upside down, falling on his head, jumping up and running up to do it again as quick as he can. And the kid who comes down after him falls on his head, sits there and cries, so I feel better about my son.
Do you consider this place to be sacred?
I'm not sure I know what the word sacred means. I don't know that any place is any more or less sacred. I would say by the definition of the word, it's sacred because it's hallowed ground and it's been built in the memory of someone who died tragically. I'd say if that's the definition of sacred, then this place certainly fits it.
How has the community itself, after the case and everything, how has it changed since this playground has been built?
I don't think it has. I think it'd be nice to think it's changed, but I think it's about the same.
Can you explain a little bit?
Zara lived in Hickory. Have you seen her house? No. It's off 127. It's there behind Cooper Tires. It's a little brick house. The windows are boarded up. It's easy to find. But that's a neighborhood. And it's a fairly tight-knit neighborhood. And she lived there for months. And none of her neighbors knew that there was a child in that house. She wasn't allowed outside. She was kept inside under lock and key, basically. Her neighbors didn't know what she was going through. And when the case broke, and all throughout the investigation and through the end of it, Children's Advocacy Center, DSS, their message was pay attention and report anything that you see that's troubling. You know, if you think there's something wrong, report it to us and we'll investigate it, and maybe there won't be anything wrong, but at least we'll know. But I don't think anybody's any more likely to do that now than they were before. I think if a little girl gets held captive in her house, this could happen again. I don't think anything's different. Maybe we're more aware of it, but what does that mean?
Do you think when people come to the park, they come just to play, or do you think they have any memory of her at all?
Well, that's kind of the interesting thing about the case was so many of us, myself included, felt like we knew her. We didn't. We felt like we knew her because we'd seen the pictures of her smiling. We'd seen the pictures of her laughing, playing. I did as much. I was as much an expert as anybody in the world on this case. I was right up there with my knowledge level was right up there with the investigators. But I don't know where her favorite food was. And neither did they. I don't know what her favorite toys were. I don't know what her favorite TV shows were. We don't know Zara. We know our idea of who she is. Very few people knew her, like I said before, because she was kept basically a prisoner in her own house. When I wrote my book about the Zahra Baker case, it was really tough to find somebody who knew this girl. Teachers weren't allowed to talk. Neighbors spoke a little bit, but they were pretty private. Family members wouldn't talk. The 20 or so people in America who knew Zara, I found 3 who would talk to me. We don't know Zara. And so when they come to this park, all they know is what they imagine.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your book that you wrote?
After writing, when I was with the Hickory Daily Record, it was my job to cover the cop beat. And on my days off, my fellow reporter, Sarah Newell Williamson, she covered the cop beat. So the two of us together covered the Zara story from beginning to end. And at one point, my publisher came up to me and said, look, you guys have written hundreds of stories about this. There aren't a lot of people in the world who know more about this case than you do. Let's write our own book. You and Sarah write it together. You'll be the lead writer. We'll write our own book about this case. We'll answer the questions that we haven't been able to answer. We'll do all new interviews. And we ended up writing the book in 6 weeks' time. It's 158 pages, which is it's not a big book, but it takes the reader through the entire case. And as much information as we have, plus a lot of new information. Like I said, we turned it around in 6 weeks, and the paper itself published it. And it was kind of an in-house thing. Published it on newsprint, sold it for $5, $4.95, and half the proceeds went to the Zahra Baker Memorial Scholarship. So we sold it at a really cheap price, and half of that cheap price went to the scholarship. So our goal was not to make money on the book. Our goal was to tell the full story. And as much as anyone has, I mean, that's, at this point, the book that I wrote is the most complete story of Zahra Baker that's been written.
Can you tell us a little bit about the scholarship? This is the first I've heard of it.
I don't know much about the scholarship. I know that it's administered by the Kiwanis Club, and they would be able to answer more of those questions.
Do you know any interesting facts or stories about the case that would be intriguing?
I know all the interesting facts and stories about the case. I think the part of the case that most people don't understand, that gets most people really angry, is when they hear that the DA charged Lisa Baker with second-degree murder, and Lisa Baker pled guilty and ended up getting 18 and a half years. Most people hear 18 and a half years and they're horrified that she got off so easy. Most people wanted her dead, or at least in jail forever. But what people either don't understand or what they've forgotten is that for the first 6 weeks of the case, nobody could prove that Zara was dead. It was a missing persons case for a long time. And the Hickory Police and the FBI and the SBI and the Highway Patrol and local sheriff's offices, they were simultaneously searching over 3 counties, digging up brush piles, emptying ponds, going up and down steep mountainsides, so steep you could basically call it a cliff. They had to rope off to search this ravine. They're in 3 counties. They're searching every moment there's light, bringing in their own light towers when it's dark. 6 weeks, and they found nothing. Now, you can have a death penalty case without a body. It's been done. Roughly 1 time. At least it's been done fewer than 5 times. I think it's been done once. So everybody is saying we don't need the body. We know she did it. We know she did it. Well, in the law, it doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you can prove. Can you prove it? Can you prove it beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt? And the answer was no. All along the way, the answer was no. So what happened was the DA met with the defense attorneys, and they met together, and the DA said, look, we've got the evidence. Let me backtrack. The DA said, look, we're going to get a conviction, but we want you to work with us. If your client tells us the truth and leads us to the body, we won't pursue the death penalty. We'll pursue murder too. Second-degree murder. They said the Lisa Baker's team agreed to it, and Lisa Baker took them to 3 sites in Caldwell County, and that's when they first started finding Zara's prosthetic leg and some bone fragments. That's when they had proof of death. They didn't have proof of death before that. Without that deal, I firmly believe that Lisa Baker would have walked away. I think the only reason Lisa Baker's in prison for 18 and a half years is because she agreed to help the prosecutors. Is 18 and a half justice? I don't know. It's a lot better than 0. And if there was no deal, we would have had 0. Add to that the 10 plus that she got for her federal drug charges. She's going to be away, maybe, she may die in prison. She'll at least come out when she's in her mid-70s, so old that she won't be able to hurt anybody else. People don't understand the choices that were made there. It's all in my book. It's a little bit complicated, but without the choices that were made, she would be a free woman today.
How do you feel about the playground itself being built?
I think that it was important for the community to come together on a playground like this. They raised money all over town in different grocery stores and just donations. It was important for the community to come together to turn a tragedy into something positive. I think this is a healing moment for the community.
Do you see anything for the future of the playground?
Hopefully we'll get a wheelchair accessible treehouse.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the place itself, or about the case, or about her story?
Just one thing. I don't know if you've talked to anybody about what was here before the playground. Has anybody talked to you about that? This was just kind of an open area, and not a lot of kids played here. Now, this is, when the weather's right, this is an extremely popular place for kids to come and play. And you've seen the other parks in Hickory. This is arguably the nicest park in Hickory, and it's in an area that's economically struggling. So we've got a nice park for some disadvantaged kids who live nearby. I don't know that you can do much better than that.
How do you feel about, do you know of any children that are handicapped that use this playground? Like, do you know about that side of it, the handicapped side?
I have seen a few, especially early on. The last couple times I've come, I haven't seen any children in wheelchairs or anything like that. I haven't seen that much of it. I think early on there are some, you need to talk to somebody who knows more than I do, but there are some schools that would come out and bring the kids on the buses and have them use the playground.
Do you feel that this place is important to the city of Hickory, or why do you feel that it's important?
I would just go back to the fact that children need a place to play, and this was a positive outcome and a healing moment for a community that really did need it. For more than a year, the national media spotlight was on the Hickory, and the international community was paying attention. My stories were being picked up in London, Sydney, Melbourne. They're being picked up across the world, the English-speaking world anyway. Everybody was thinking about Hickory, and they weren't thinking about Hickory because it's an all-American city or because it has a nice university. They're thinking about Hickory because it's where Zara died. And so the city needed to recover from that, and this is how they did.
How did you get involved with the case? I know you worked for the Hickory Daily Record, but was there a reason they chose you to follow the case?
They chose me to follow the case because it was my job. The case broke on a Saturday, and that I worked weekends so that I could teach during the week at LR. The case broke on a Saturday. On a Sunday, they had a media conference. I was the guy. I was on duty. The Saturday it broke. I say broke. The 911 call came in on the Saturday that I was covering Oktoberfest. That actually became part of the case. Zara's dad and stepmom said that they had taken her to Oktoberfest, and that was the first of a number of lies that they told the police. The cops were able to take a look at the video camera feeds from downtown Hickory, and they could see Adam and Lisa, and they could see that Zara clearly wasn't with them. So that was one of the first leads they had, that this couple was lying about it. But day one, I was covering Oktoberfest. Day two, I was just working my normal beat on Sunday, and they had a media conference, and a few Charlotte, like 2 or 3 Charlotte TV stations came up, myself. Not a lot of people very interested on that Sunday. And then eventually, when they had a media conference, you'd see 30 news outlets in the room. So it mushroomed. I was there day one, throughout the end.
Did you enjoy the case, or was there things that you felt went wrong, or?
Well, it was hard for me. I mean, I've got 5 kids. My daughter was about Zara's age when this thing broke open. And I think the hardest part is to tell the story. You need to know the story. You need to know what questions to ask. So I know a lot more about this case than I want to. And that puts the cops on this case called themselves Team Zara. And Team Zara had access to mental health counseling. They would come together and they would talk about what they'd seen, and they would talk about what they were feeling. But on the news side, we were all independent actors. You know, I would go home, and sometimes I'd talk to my wife about it, and sometimes it was too much, and I would just keep it to myself. It was hard. It was very hard emotionally. to think about this, to think about the things that happened in the run-up to her death and then following her death.
Are there any experiences that make this place significant to you?
Team Zara, I mean, if you talk to any cop who was on this case about the weather, about how their kid's doing in sports, or about anything else, if you talk to any cop who is on this case for any period of time, they'll eventually work Zara into the conversation. Because for a lot of these guys, Zara is going to define their career as law enforcement. This is the biggest case that most of these guys are ever going to see. It was certainly the biggest case I ever wrote about. You know, it was basically the peak of my career as a reporter. I covered the case, I wrote the book, I left the industry. So when I think about my days as a reporter, it's all wrapped around Zara. And this is a part of that. This is the outcome.
Are there any last things you'd like to tell us?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Sure.